Hi there, and this is our Christmas special, which we'll be showing on the Britain's in History page. So Merry Christmas to you all. Um, but today we're recording on the 19th, and we've just heard of the passing of Baron Blackett, which we're very sorry to hear about. So condolences to his family and to everyone who's followed his work. Um,
Absolutely,
and
absolutely. Really sad to hear.
yeah,
And it
absolutely.
really just sort of brings it home to me about why we do this.
Yeah, which
Yeah.
we will endeavour to carry on and keep on shouldering this work and its movement forward. So thank you, Baron. Okay, so yeah, I went to London recently.
Mm.
Went to go and see Rob Shaw's talk at Watkins Books. Which I've seen Rob talk before. He's a great talker. He did a great job of presenting some of the themes in his book, which is here. You can buy this at Corroborated, and I'll give a link to it in the description below. It's fantastic.
I lent my copy to some bugger and he's still got it.
Oh, you haven't got it back yet.
I want
Ah,
it back. I want to read it again.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Recommend anyone reading it if he wants to see, how London plays a big part in the how our history has been suppressed and some of the very interesting architectural elements of London post the fire, um, the Great Fire of London, and how there was a great plan to rejig the architecture in a kind of very precisely meant way. And I'll let Rob explain that in his book, and I'll give a link to his
Mm.
page in there as well.
Did you say that the talk was recorded?
Yes, I did. Yeah, it's not up yet, I think. I haven't seen it go up.
Well, we applying a bit of pressure here, are
Yeah, maybe we are.
we? It's
Um,
inadvertent. Don't sorry.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Um,
Yeah, I'd love to see that. Um,
Absolutely, yeah.
for those of us who couldn't make the journey so far. I'd never even heard of this London place beforehand. Big deal in the East, I've heard.
Yeah,
I've been to Bath once.
but
Yeah, yeah, I know. No, of course, I've been to London before. So
yeah,
I've been to Troyno
sort of that. Or Caelud as well.
oh, Caelid. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, great.
Yeah, yeah, which we'll go into. Yeah, great stuff. And yeah, so basically getting back on track. Whilst I was in London, I thought it was a great opportunity. I had a day off work, and I just took that chance to go around and see some of the key sites in London, um, which are been central to this, understanding London in this other way, in this hidden way, this British and Bardic way as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and there's a few things which I'll highlight, which we'll go into and discuss and pull those apart. But I also went to the British Museum as well, just to get, so I've got some footage of some British artifacts in there as well.
Yeah, great.
There isn't loads in the British Museum that's
No, there
British.
isn't.
But there is some stuff which
Mm,
I'll go into. All right, so let's kick it off. Yeah, New Troy, Caer Lud,
mm,
Londinium, and London in that order. This photo here, great stuff. The very very Welsh-looking dragon here. That's in the Temple Bar, which is very near where these statues were, and we'll go into that. Okay.
ah, right, cool.
So yeah, if you've been watching our channel, the Britain's in History channel, you'll understand the kind of spirit in which we approach history, which is very much questioning what we're given as the basis of our, or is the basic kind of history we're given in school and in museums, etc. London has got an ancient written history which is contained within the Welsh traditions and the Bardic traditions, which predates Londinium, which is the Roman settlement. Um, we're seeing a lot of archaeological finds at the moment which allow us to challenge the current orthodoxy to do with Romans founding the city and being the first inhabitants there.
Mm,
There's this archaeological dig going on at the moment, which allows us to take the history of inhabited London way back to the 36th century BC, and there's lots of
mm.
Neolithic pottery there. I think there's sort of lots of different fragments there, and there's a couple of photos, and there's not loads of photos available, but there is an abundance of these pottery artifacts available. Um, and
And this is Neolithic, is it?
this is Neolithic,
Hmm.
and it's actually in the square mile as well. So
Oh, right. So it's in London then.
proper London, yeah.
Yeah, it's in Londinium.
London, yeah, exactly that.
Yeah.
And it's so there's no doubt that there's a there's human activity going on there for a very early time, and that that immediately allows us to really reshift our what we think of how London was incepted as a place. Um,
I was having a quick look at finds that have been coming out of the Thames recently.
excellent.
Because this is something that happens all the time, and it still hasn't stopped yielding artifacts. And there doesn't seem to be a time period that's not represented.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
sometimes you get like amazing like bits of Mesolithic flint work or something like that,
Wow.
Neolithic stuff, and then obviously there's been really famous Iron Age finds as well.
Yes,
Um,
exactly.
I
Yeah,
just, yeah, fantastic stuff. So,
brilliant. Um, and this is something that Rob Shaw spoke a little bit about, so I have to credit him with this idea. But the idea that Romans incepted London wasn't ever something that the Romans themselves claimed.
mm,
In fact, the Roman historians actually remarked on how busy the place was as a commercial centre, um, which obviously during the Romano British the Romano British commerce they very much took advantage of.
yeah,
So Tacitus writes that London was a busy commercial centre, um, and as well as Cassius Dio, um, he writes that the Romans at one point were chasing down some Britons, and they were failing until they found a bridge,
mm,
used to cross the Thames to get these Britons.
yeah.
And I think
One they hadn't pre-built.
yeah, exactly that. Yeah,
Yeah.
this is early stuff.
Mm,
Um, and I heard there has been a bridge found. There has been evidence of an early bridge found. I couldn't find it anywhere online, but what I have found is this big chunk of wood here, which is said to be AD 75 according to carbon dating.
right.
Um, but
That, yeah, that's, yeah.
what do you
Okay,
think of
sorry,
carbon?
carry on, carry
What
on.
do you think of carbon dating, Peter?
Well, we could go two ways on this.
Yeah,
Let's just even go, I think carbon dating is fine. Let's just go with that. And does that date when the wood went into the water? Does that date when the wood was cut? Does that date when the wood was first grown? Like which part of the wood has been is it the outer rings that's been carbonated, which would give a more closer idea to when it was cut. But if you took it from the center, then it would be a younger date. So
yeah,
that it's just like, yeah, it's just you can't. it's really difficult when people just say, "Oh, this has been carbon dated." Is that you really like to know the process of
Yeah,
how they did it and where they took it from, and just hope. All you can do is hope that they did it in the best possible way. But
yeah,
unless you have it written in front of you, it's I just get find a bit yeah
yeah. And that is exactly along the same lines that I think of this sort of thing, um, because what you can say is that in AD 75, that's a year when you can sort of benchmark to say the Romans were doing certain things in Britain, i.e., I think they were building Fishbourne Palace in 75
yeah.
AD. So they've
But
gotten
there
to
was already a lot of Roman stuff going on there long before the Claudian invasion as
yeah,
well, of Fishbourne as well. Like so, but yeah, carry on. Sorry,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. No worries. Yeah, no, yeah, it's great. I thought I'd bring this up because
yeah,
I can say you can say okay, AD 75. Okay, great. You don't know the methodology that goes behind that.
no,
It might have been 100 years before, it might have been 100 years after, but they've got to choose a date to put down which is commensurate with the narrative.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
Nice round number as well.
yeah,
75, isn't it?
exactly that, exactly that. So, but what I'm saying is we've got textual content of wharves or bridges
Yeah,
which are pre-Roman, and we've got ancient evidence. We've got evidence of ancient wharves which are emerging, which could be pre-Roman. I saw somewhere that people say it's debated whether it was Roman or pre-Roman. So you see this kind of thing a lot, which is
yeah,
it could be Roman.
yeah,
It more than likely leans over to that Roman side quite a lot.
yeah,
I
yeah,
know that's not the best, piece of evidence, but it's something to think about with this sort of
yeah.
thing.
I didn't even know this existed, so it's great to see anyway. So
Cool,
that's
cool,
cool.
nice one. But going back to the trip that I had, I went to one of the actual artifacts which I went to go and see was the London or Brutus stone, as it's also been called.
Is that one called the Brutus Stone too? Is it?
Yeah, it was in the 19th century. It had there was a big noise about it being belonging to Brutus
Oh, fair. Okay.
by people,
Interesting.
but
Yeah.
it's but before that, I mean, yeah, as here at the bottom here, Shakespeare had a scene where Henry VII actually strikes this sword
Oh,
with stone.
oh, really? It's in Shakespeare, is it?
So it's in Shakespeare, so it's a lot older, probably the 19th century.
Yeah, absolutely.
That kind of idea. So, and obviously, what Shakespeare's done there is linked Henry VII in with that the Brutes of England history, which is to do with it's got the Arthurian thing in there, the
Yeah,
very
of course.
Arthurian
Yeah.
motif of striking the sword against the stone,
Yeah.
uh, which is associated with sovereignty and connection between kingship and the land.
Yeah.
Going back to I've got a video of it. I'll show you in a second. But yeah, this this was in Cannon Street, which was close to where it was found. I think it moved from somewhere else beforehand, but it was in a really not very nice housing for a long, long time. And this is its new
Right.
feature, which I'll show you in the video.
Yeah.
Uh,
Okay.
but the official consensus on this, bit similar to what I've just said with the wharf there, um, it's it's debated whether it's Roman or not. People say,
It's not, is it? I've never actually heard that before. They're not saying it's Roman. Oh
yeah,
no.
yeah, yeah, absolutely,
I see. I'd heard it. It was like either like Bronze Age or late Neolithic.
yeah,
I'd heard that go around, and I think that's really interesting because it shows how that these monuments continue to have relevance in different periods
mm,
for different reasons. I think that's absolutely fascinating, and possibly that we have a very old tradition at that time, so we have a sort of a link back to that past. Striking that sword with a stone could have gone back thousands of years. Just
yeah,
don't know how well those main histories are maintained, but that's a really old written
yeah,
reference that monument was still being used and had relevance in that time period, which is really cool. But yeah,
Yeah,
I'd not heard it was Roman, but I'm
yeah.
not surprised to be honest.
No, no. This we see it all the time, don't we?
Are we
Uh,
going to tick the last box on the bingo card?
oh,
Has
uh,
anyone said it's Saxon?
no, they haven't. No,
All right, okay.
Or Norman. No, they haven't.
We escaped that one.
Yeah, yeah. How funny. But interesting you said that about the sword and the stone going way back. I actually came across this story this week about a Tuscan tradition of that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which I
Oh,
sorry, didn't prepare for this to mention this. I was going to mention this later, but I'll throw it up on the screen for you all to see anyway. But there's an ancient Tuscan story which does the same thing with the sword and the stone. And Tuscan, as we know, is um,
mm,
modern day Etruria, where the through the migrations to Britain, that's where the Britons said they came from via Troy, via Etruria.
yeah,
Um, cool.
cool.
Uh,
That sounds great.
Brilliant. So narratives which have been associated with this stone, as I mentioned earlier, William Shakespeare, uh,
Mm,
but it was in the 19th century where this idea of it becoming, or this idea of it being belonging to Brutus was big. Um, you know, or it was that was when it was coalescing as a myth or as a
mm,
legend. But so Blake mentions it as being a druidic ritual stone, and an Anglican priest, Richard Williams Morgan, um, also cites what he says is an ancient proverb which states that so long as the stone of Brutus is safe, so long will London flourish. And thought that was worth mentioning.
yeah, yeah.
Cool. So but yeah, here's a little video of the new fascia of the Brutus stone, which I've got in my new GoPro camera in
Yeah, nice.
Cannon Street.
Is, is the building a bank?
Yeah,
Awesome. Yeah, yeah. Oh, wow, look at that.
but it's a limestone.
Am I right in saying the suggestion was it got buried up to a certain point and then they just knocked the top off and that's the top and the rest is possibly buried?
Oh, I didn't know. Not
Yeah,
heard.
literally just from the build up of human midden, you know,
Yes, yeah,
it got and like the building, you know, everyone's building on cellars of old buildings and things like that and going up. The level goes up. Apparently, the level went up to a certain point, and then it was causing like traffic accidents or something like that.
right,
So they just knocked the bit off that was above the surface, and that's what
right,
remained, and that's what it is. But I don't know how if that's an assumption or
yeah. That'd be good to look into.
you
That's
see
pretty.
me well researched as always, Adam.
Yeah. Um.
I have read it, but I don't know where.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah. Well,
here we go.
I'll throw it up on the screen if we get it. But yeah, the remaining part of the London stone, which once stood in the middle of Cannon Street, slightly west of its present location, its original purpose is unknown. Although it may be Roman, and related to Roman buildings that lay to the south, it was already called the London Stone in the 12th century and became an important city landmark. And in 1450, Jack Cade, leader of the rebellion against the corrupt government of Henry VI, struck it with his sword and claimed to be Lord of London,
Lord of London. Yeah, cool.
um, which sounds similar to the Shakespeare motif as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah, nothing mentioned there about it being broken off, but I'll dig into that.
Yeah, it might have just been on the Wikipedia or something like that. Oh, it's londonstone.org.uk. Um, so yeah, did you? Is there any clue to what these Roman buildings to the south might be?
No.
Are they suggesting it was just a building block?
Yeah. I don't.
Yeah.
I couldn't see anything on that website.
No. Oh, right, fair enough.
London
Is it
Stone.org.
just the same thing?
Yeah, it seems like that. Yeah,
Yeah, that's presented here. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So yeah. I mean, if you've got a settlement in a inhabited area, it's going to be amongst Roman buildings if it's pre-Roman.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean? So
It's not going to move out just for the Roman period, is it?
no, no.
Move back in after,
Yeah, yeah, exactly that.
like the Brits are
Yeah,
meant to have done. Uh,
yeah. But yeah, no. This is actually the thing I went to go see first because I had to see it first. And this cheers Peter for sending me
that's
the
all right.
that.
It was something that Ross did ages ago, and it was one of the things that really stuck in my mind, like as a place, and I'd love to see it myself.
Yeah,
I'm glad
absolutely.
you went and got some good video and some nice photos as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, these weren't easy to find. And I'll post up the address of where they are. Um,
Mm,
I found them in a Orthodox church, in St Dunstan. So it's this thing. I have to mention this quickly.
yeah,
In my site visits, I'm starting to see a lot of the relics of the British epos being preserved or kept by the Orthodox Church. Um, like in
interesting.
like in Colchester, the cult of um, St Helena of the Cross, it's like the only reference you get in Colchester to St Helena of the Cross is in the church, the Greek Orthodox Church there, and they've got a big cult for it there. Um,
Wow.
Seems to be the only reference to it.
Mm,
Whilst when I visited Colchester, not even in so in Colchester Castle, there's a great museum there. They've got lots of sort of Roman stuff,
yeah, yeah.
usual kind of thing, but no reference to St Helena of the Cross or anything like that. But in the Greek Orthodox Church, they're making a big show about it.
Fascinating.
And
What
it,
do
sorry,
you know? Why do you think this is, Adam?
I think this is because where we've had the culture of um, Roman Christianity in Britain for such a long time, you had, I think, a vested interest in keeping that British ethos suppressed, or did a great job to keep these sorts of narratives um, outside of conversation. Um, we've had a long tradition of that. Before we had the Reformation, before we had the move to Protestantism, we had a
Mm,
long period of history where British Christianity and any notions associated with it were seen as, I guess, heretical or something not worth talking about. We've illustrated before on this channel how those narratives, because they're so closely associated with legitimation to rule in this country and also to claim very orthodox and ancient Christian heritage, um, they have been a real threat to the Roman Catholic Church.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
um,
That is probably, I think, the key, isn't it? It's that the the philosophical and religious element of it is absolutely fascinating,
yeah,
but it's unfortunately comes into a very sticky point in this country where, as you say, it's really closely related with how with the rulers of our country, and
yeah,
so then immediately becomes a highly politicized issue. And
yes,
what seems unnecessary as religious dogma is actually because it's propaganda, it's political propaganda,
yeah,
um, and they're just so just it's just unfortunate really in this country. It's become such a contentious issue for the
yeah,
most powerful people on the islands for thousands of years.
yeah, absolutely. Um, yes, I mean, I'm thinking along the lines now that the period in which you had Edward the First, who basically cornered, the northwest of Wales into a war that they didn't
Yeah,
want to be in with Llewellyn Ap Griffith. I
yeah,
think a lot of that was simultaneous or contemporary to the Holy Inquisitions in Europe with the Roman Catholic Church, with the Cathars and the Waldensians, who
yeah,
are essentially the remaining kind of Gnostic Christians in Europe. Uh,
yeah.
so there is, I think, in the 13th century, a real drive from the church to become quite aggressive towards um,
Non-conformists.
yeah,
So
no,
yeah,
exactly that, and everything. And on that note, I think when we look at Gnostics now, what I'm quite dubious of is the way that information about Gnostics is presented now, because they are presented through what we know about them, and what we know about them is written before the finding of the Dead Sea Scrolls and Nag Hammadi.
yeah, yeah.
Before that, the only information we had on them were written by the Catholic priests who had to write propaganda about them, who wrote certain things about their theology, which was maybe incorrect, maybe there to essentially ward you off becoming one. You know, um, that's another topic though.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not not
Fascinating.
not to
Let's get
stray
back to
too.
Lud.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So anyway, back to Lud. So his statue with his two sons, Androgeus and Tenvantius, are situated in the vestry porch of this church, which I'll give the address to, so you go and see it for yourself. Um, and Lud, according to Geoffrey of Monmouth, um, is the founding king of London, um, and London is essentially his fortress. So Lud, um, the where we get the name Ludgate essentially has been attributed to King Lud. Um,
Hmm.
and Ludgate, interestingly, is the highest point in central London.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which I found out yesterday. Um, but the,
Ideal place for a little hill fort, then.
that's where I'm going with that. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you said that.
Yeah,
Um, so
awesome. I didn't
yeah,
know that. I really didn't know that.
when you're doing this kind of stuff, I know we've spoken about this before many times, you get all these kind of synchronicities where you're watching TV or you're reading a book or you're just listening to the radio, whatever it is, but you get information come at you which is seemingly unconnected. But then
Yeah.
it's anyway, I was just watching a TV show yesterday and they're talking about how Ludgate was highest point.
Oh, nice.
That's great. Excellent. If he's going to have a
Brilliant.
seat, of sovereignty anywhere, it's going to be at the highest point there, isn't it?
Yeah.
Um,
And it fits the pattern of Roman town building. It makes sense that there would be a local fortress there. I mean,
yeah.
that's why they placed them in places they were doing. And the Thames didn't just like magically become a good trading river when the Romans turned up. It already was. Like it is what it is. So
Yeah.
uh, there would have been people. We know there are people in the area. These are the sort of like the main players in the uh, Caesar's invasion and the early parts of the Claudian invasion. The Thames Valley is so important. Like
Yes. Yeah.
we know the lower Thames Valley is. There's people there, like, and they're defending it quite voraciously as well. So,
Mhm.
um, and we know there's political strife amongst them as well, which is interesting. But um,
Yeah.
it means it's an important and contested region. Like it doesn't just become valuable when the Romans turn up. Like same goes for the Seven.
Yeah. Absolutely. Where you've got a river, you've often got
Yeah.
trade, you also a settlement for numbers of reasons.
Hmm.
So another good thing to bear in mind. Um, but Lud is interesting for many reasons, and part of that is his ancestry and
Mm.
who he's linked to. Um, So Lud is remembered as the son of Beli Mal, and the we've spoken about this particular thing before about you kind of get the mythologization of certain historical characters, and they
Yeah,
have there's that reality there, kind of metaphysical reality of how they're remembered in myth,
yeah,
which is sometimes often conflated with real historical personages
yeah.
with real histories. Um, and Bally is one of those characters. So is his mother, who's said to be in um, the British mythological epos, um, said to be Anna of Arimathea,
Mm,
um, who can be a confabulation of the British sovereignty goddess Don. Sometimes Lud is the husband of Don or the son of, but it's in Annals Cambriae, um, which I'll give a link to. I've given a link to the Harleian MS 3958. Lud is rather the husband of Anna of Arimathea. But there's that link there. I'll think think Alan Wilson Alan Wilson and Baron Blackett give the same idea there. And this is where Jesus is buried, which when looking at Belly Mound is essential. And I'll
yeah.
give a link to that as well. um, so
Well, it is Christmas, so we should really mention Jesus. It's not all about Father Christmas, is it? Santa Claus.
exactly.
Father Christmas. Father Christmas, the mushroom shaman, as I thoroughly believe he is.
Oh yeah, the Amanita Muscaria
Yeah,
guy. Yeah,
absolutely. Flying reindeer, But
yeah.
also, I was thinking it's very much like a Fey character, isn't he? Like, knows if you're good or bad and, comes into your
Mm.
house, leaves things for you, but you've still got to leave more gifts out for him. It's very much like
Mm.
Fey folk and pixies and things like that.
Yeah,
It's strange. It's got to be, I bet that's thousands and thousands of years old, this idea.
yeah.
Older than Coca-Cola.
All of the Coca. Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, wasn't Father Christmas dressed in green before he was red because of the Coca-Cola advert?
Well, I think it was like not any particular colours. So
Yeah.
you see him in brown or green or blue or whatever. But I imagine probably red and white as well. But I think Coca-Cola definitely made it like super popularized it as red and white, which is why we use it all the time, which is quite funny. Like, what is there some sort of esoteric reason why they're into the red and white Santa?
Well, it could be because, as mentioned, the Amanita Muscaria are red and white. So,
Yeah,
like,
absolutely. Yeah.
so
But
when people say Coca-Cola were the ones who turned Father Christmas red and white, you can go, well, hang on, it could come from a psychedelic cult which uses red and white mushrooms. Oh,
who knows? Who knows?
nice. Anyway, so yeah,
Back to Lud. Back to Lud.
Back to Lud. Yeah. So yeah, Lud is is the husband of Anna of Arimathea, um,
Yeah.
which is what is agreed by Wilson and Blackett, um, who is also Don in the epos. And you've got this essentially this concept of Hliston, which is what I've heard certain people say is the Bardic name for London.
Ah,
Hlis,
interesting. At least, yeah.
Hliston means the court of
Cool.
Don,
Yeah.
court of sovereignty.
Yeah.
So that would make sense for it to be London. But there's another place that Hliston could be as well, and I'll get back to that later on.
Oh, cool.
Um,
And that the word list has come through in so many British place names, and is sort of probably more maintained in Wales in its spelling in that fashion. But I've seen it in number of different ways that it's mutated.
Yeah.
So mutating Liston into London is not beyond the realms of possibility.
No, no, absolutely, and especially if you've got this relationship between Lud and Don as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Lud, Don. It's it seems to be some sort of some resonance there with the names. Um, but I just wanted to throw this in quickly about how Don is attributed to the constellation of Cassiopeia, um, which is also to do with a Bardic seat.
Oh, right, cool.
That makes sense. There's a
Yeah, yeah.
idea of it being that there's like a throne enthronement thing going on, and Don's daughter, who is also said to be the sister of Lud, um, gets the corona borealis as well. So the crown.
Right,
Um,
okay.
so all of these motifs surrounding Lud are all to do with sovereignty. Okay,
Mm,
which is you know it makes sense because Lud is incepted London. And I'm not talking about the mythological epos here,
mm,
but actually I think these become superimposed onto real people for certain reasons.
absolutely.
Talking about how that tradition has sort of kept that alive. So I found that really interesting.
In as much as the historical Arthur of the 6th century, the Morgan and Gwent, embodies some idea of the ancient mythological Arth, bear warrior, bear prince,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
and therefore these ideas have become, snowballed together.
yeah,
But yeah, there is a reason for it. There's a reason that because he was a very uh, powerful leader and brilliant soldier. So
yeah. We go. Yeah, exactly. Um, so there's another reference to Caer Arianrhod, which is Arianrhod is Lud's sister, and there's a rock um, in Gwynedd which is associated with that constellation as well. And Gwynedd is another one of these places where there is a court of sovereignty. Do you see what I
yeah,
mean?
okay, cool, yeah.
So I thought I'd just add that in there, and there's a link to the website where I got that as well. Um, right. So before I move on with Lud,
Oh
and
yeah, I'd love to see this.
Lud and Belly, here's a video took again of them in the vestry porch. And there's no, as you can see, there's no label as to say who they are or anything like that. So
Fantastic. Yeah,
yeah,
I can't remember which Wilson and Blackett it is, but it might even say on the something about the Wikipedia page, maybe not, but I believe these went up and down on Ludgate several times throughout history, or that at least these were replacements for ones that have come down, and then these
right.
ones have been up and down as well. So I thought it was very funny in the wake of our, we had some recent iconoclasm with the slavery anti, Black Lives Matter and stuff like that, with throwing statues away, and it just shows it's just interesting how when politics change, certain things get destroyed or moved or whatever, and I just think it's so interesting with these British histories how they have been up and down several times as the wind changes, whereas certain people want to use things for their own benefit, they'll take that up again, and
Yeah.
put themselves as and cast themselves as part of it. Yeah, absolutely brilliant,
And
fascinating, good
yeah,
old lad.
brilliant. Yeah, that's it. And now he's living in an Orthodox church, which seems
Yeah,
to be the only people interested in upholding a kind of this old history. And something that's just come to me about that is that there seems to be a kind of veiled respect for Britain's orthodoxy is what I kind of feel,
Mm,
in these people, that they recognise that there is an Orthodox Christian label which can be attached to us here in Britain
mm.
due to our history. Um, yeah.
Well, it just shows which way the politics is at the moment. That
Mm.
Caelid is in, in the vestry porch
Yeah.
of a church.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. Um, excellent. I One more thing about Christianity in Britain before we move on as well. And this is totally unrelated, but I don't know if you saw the Catherine Bester uploaded a section of a letter sent by Elizabeth I to St.
Oh yes, yeah, yeah, yeah,
That was incredible. And
yeah.
this,
It's great. Yeah.
I'll share that on the screen as well. But this is another um, example of that kind of battle that's been going on in Britain for a long time between us and the church, um, which is that, and this was a time, the Tudor period was a time where that British ethos, where people like Lud were celebrated.
Mm.
These I think these statues aren't far off Elizabeth, to be honest, in terms
No,
of,
no. I think you're right.
yeah. Elizabeth is talking about how we've been kind of led astray by the church in certain times,
Mm,
and there's or that we're being led by what was it, a wolf or some kind of prey animal
mm.
instead of a careful shepherd, and that she actually made a reference to the flock of Christ as well when referencing the British people. So
Interesting.
I'll share a page of that as well. But
It's
this
just
thing,
it's just one thing that annoys me is that it's even like what the politics is either way doesn't bother me personally. I just
Mhm.
like to know the history,
Yeah,
but the history hasn't been discarded and sidelined because it's not, because it's wrong.
yes,
It's because of political reasons that it's been put to one side. And then once you understand that, you can then get so much more of a richer idea of our history when you embrace it and you look at the whole thing holistically. You can see there's way more going on, and it's so much more interesting. And that's the big deal for me. I just want to know the history.
excellent, excellent.
Shove
Yeah,
your politics.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they shouldn't censor us from certain information which can give us further context for our past. And I think
Yeah. So
that's
just
how,
allow us, just sort of allow discussion and in a way, well, not say allow it. I mean, it just doesn't happen in the mainstream at all. And it would be lovely to see people actually talking about archaeology and history in terms of a Brythonic Britain as well as an English Britain or a Welsh Britain or a, Scottish Britain. It doesn't really
yeah,
make sense. Doesn't make
no,
sense. Like,
no, no,
no,
not when
especially when we're talking about the time periods we're talking about as well.
yeah, 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 great, absolutely great point. Um, so that actually leads us on quite nicely to a discussion about Belly, because he's often presented as belonging solely to Gwynedd, which is
Mm,
but this is something which is held in the mythological epos,
right.
and actually because so many Welsh kings claim descent from Belly, I'm sure you're going to see, you know, instances where he's going to be confined to a certain area over another,
Yeah.
basically. But
Yeah.
this needs speaking about because unfortunately, because that's happened in the mainstream consensus suggests that we can't attribute Belly to being someone who is real, who actually lived. Other scholars um, argue differently, um, and I'll go into that. But the link has been made also traditionally between Beli Mawr and Cymbelin or Cynnebeline.
Yeah.
Um, and I think what I read something earlier. Um, that says, "Don't be tempted to do this because Beli is said to be in Gwynedd, and Cunobelinus is the king of
Yeah,
the Catavelonis, which are in southeast England,
yeah,
and that then therefore Belimau cannot be the same as Cunobelinus because of that, right?"
rubbish.
Actually, if you understand Cunobelinus as someone who has offspring and descendants who then some go on to rule other parts of Britain,
Britain, yeah, absolutely.
they're going to claim that character in the
Yeah,
mythological sense for that area,
yeah,
which I think is what's happened.
yeah. I mean, I've seen a number of very compelling arguments for who Cunobelinus is,
Yeah,
who we can relate him to in the British records, and I find it absolutely mind bending. I find it really hard to follow, like to try and weigh certain arguments up against each other. But um, yeah, so I'm quite happy to go along with Belly as Kimberline as
right.
as I am as much with other arguments as well. Um,
Yeah,
but it's such a fascinating period. And also, isn't Heli related to honey as well in terms of meaning? And the
yes,
Honey Island is one of the ancient names for Britain, or
yes.
the island of Heli, not necessarily even honey at all,
That's fascinating, isn't it?
but representing the person. So
Yeah, yeah, and that's yeah in itself. I came across that as well. I thought that was really
mm,
interesting. And we see we got Heli is the reference in Luke 3:25 for the grandfather of Jesus.
yeah,
So that's which is again that's in this book here, which goes into all of this stuff.
mm,
Highly recommend it.
yeah. This is where you get the link to the kings of the Tyrrhenian Sea as well, isn't it?
Yeah,
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 and that
absolutely.
crops up so many times.
That phrase has cropped up. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. Um, yeah, and Heli by Jeffrey is given as Belly.
Belly, yeah, yeah,
So cool. That's our link. Um, and obviously, in the the kind of conversation of comparative mythology, going back to the mythological Belly again.
mm,
Belly that Belly Maud is equated with Apollo, who's a sun god,
yeah.
who essentially was celebrated by the Romans. The Romans were very into sun gods and sun worship, which I think is why that image of Jesus becomes superimposed onto the those images by the church at that point to celebrate a sun god, basically, and switch them over. Um,
Origin, yeah, like I said, Beltane, yeah,
Beltane, and yeah, the origin of Beltane as well, which yes, and as Peter's mentioned, Belimauer is seen as Jesus, the Jesus who came to Britain, um, or at least
um,
a son of Jesus or a descendant of Jesus or relation of Jesus.
yeah.
Yeah, cool.
What was there was another one I was going to add. Did Wilson and Blackett also uh, do they translate belly as like the tumult,
Yes, yeah, the
the
great.
great tumult, and
Yeah,
it's part of their point that where they're trying to point out the Romanization or Latinization of some of the British names as sort of kind of draw you away from what the actual meaning of the names is, because then it shows that they're actually a title and not a name or an
yeah,
epithet or something like that, something similar.
excellent.
Well,
Yeah,
that's the argument made anyway. I think it's really interesting. And another thing is there's another Belly as well, isn't there? Brother of Bran,
yeah,
or Brennius, and it's Belly and Bran who and Geoffrey of Monmouth sacked Rome. Um, it's something I've been think it just keeps on popping into my mind because that Bran is interesting because it's another one of those occurrences where I don't think the Roman records and the and Geoffrey of Monmouth actually disagree with each other.
Yeah.
So they say he's a king in Gaul. Geoffrey says he's a king in Britain and Gaul.
Hmm.
And then they
Okay.
both say
Yeah.
they sacked, he's not exclusively a Gallic king. But yeah, his brother
Yeah.
who continued to rule in Britain after they had a falling out, and Brennus ruled in Gaul, was another belly, and could very well have been on the same line, and that's why this name crops up again and again. This is something that seems to happen a lot in genealogies. Is well, and kings do it all the time. So kings and queens do it all the time, taking on names of a name can be very powerful. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. We see that in the Welsh genealogies quite a lot, don't we?
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And the Romans were fond of it too.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Mm. Cool. So yeah, Historic Britain mentions belly as a reference to Cunna Belinus, right?
Nice.
Um, which is why I think Belly Mao, because he's presented as the king of Lud. Sorry,
Yeah.
the father of Lud. Um, that's why it fits in for me for being in the southeast of England, the
Yeah.
Catalonia on that Thames there, on the north side of the Thames there. Um, yeah, and as I've mentioned earlier, that element, because the thing about Belly being confined to Gwynedd in the myth means that we can't attribute him to Cunobelinus.
Mm.
But for me, it seems that the timelines fit in, um, and they're around the same time. They're around the same.
Yeah.
So that for me, I'm at the moment happy to say that Cunobelinus is Belly Mal. Um, but yeah, so on my trip as well, I went to see the Mithraeum,
Nice.
which is it was round the corner from the stone, literally.
Oh right, great.
Well, yeah. And there's an interesting link with Christmas Day here for Mithras, and the clue is around this border here, which the 12 zodiacs, and I'll go into that a little bit in a second. But yeah, Mithras in the center of the zodiacs.
Mm.
He's another solar god. He's
Yeah.
a solar deity used by. It was very popular um, with the Romans until um, 383, which is interesting because
Oh yes.
that's the year that Magnus Maximus invades Europe with
Yeah.
the continent with his son Androgathius, and you might have seen, I think, possibly desecration of lots of Mithraic cults there, possibly
Mm.
because that's
And
when it died out. That was when the last Pope of Mithras, or the last Papa of Mithras, resigned and said that was it. Anyway,
I think there was um Magnus Maximus also persecuted some Christians he didn't like as well in Spain, certain
okay,
writers. So he was obviously hot on a certain religious viewpoint that was not either Mithraic or this type of
right,
Christianity. But
that's really
I believe it was it St. Samson or I don't know, it would have been much earlier than that, wouldn't it? It's another other famous saint who sort of who has a British link who uh, spoke on behalf of them, I believe. To him. I'm not sure. I mean, sorry, that was a random thing I read ages ago that's sort of come up again. So,
it
right.
happens, mate. Yeah. Cool. Right. Um, so who is Mithras? Mithras is a Persian sun god, which goes back to 14th century BC. Very
Wow.
old, very old deity. the cult of Mithras in Rome doesn't indicate a lineal kind of continuum of a Mithraic cult. It's actually picked up and dropped over a long period of time. It was picked up by the Romans, obviously. Um, but Mithras's birthday, we know that Mithras. We don't know loads and loads about the Mithraic cult of Rome, but we know that Emperor Aurelian um, uh, confirmed the Mithras Day to be on the 25th of December as a holiday for Sol Invictus. So this is all
Mhm.
to do with the solstice and the return of the sun, essentially. Which is another, like Apollo, there's this instantiation of Christ later on all of these solar deities in Rome. Do
Right.
you see what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, not trying to offend anybody's religion here or anything like that. I'm just, it's, you know,
Yeah.
what I've found to be crossovers between, um, for example, Mithras had 12 disciples, a bit like Christ, but they were in the zodiac. Do you see what I mean?
Mm,
So
absolutely.
this kind of thing is occurring where the Romans took certain motifs and elements from, Christianity and placed them on things which were already there, so people could easily convert, which is definitely what happened. Which is
Yeah.
why we celebrate Christmas on the 25th of December, um, instead of when he's said to have been born. I think Wilson and Blackett say it's on St. David's Day or Dewey's Day. Now, actually,
Mm,
Dewey is Christ, and that's why we celebrate Dewey's Day on the 1st of March.
mm.
Um,
If you want to just, could we go back a slide, please, Adam?
Osman, yeah,
So you got an interesting astronomical thing with Mithras as well. You know, relating back to Martin's star map. Um, got a position, I believe it's of Orion and Taurus in the sky, and it
yeah,
is the slaying of the bull and
yes, yes,
the the age of the end of the age of Taurus as well. Uh, very interesting.
yeah. I think there could be an element with Baal as well. Baal is the a deity, a Canaanite deity, which was essentially the diametric opposite of of Yahweh.
Mm,
Um, and people have speculated that that could be the origin of Beltane as well, Baltane,
Valentine, yeah.
which is an interesting thing. But Baal is a bull as well, so that's
Mm.
worth mentioning, worth throwing in there. Not going to claim to make any kind of strong claims about that at the moment. An extra element I thought I'd throw in for doing
Apparently,
it.
so you know the big. Have you heard of the big Roman temple to Jupiter at Baalbek in the Lebanon? This is a place where there's like three. Right at the bottom of the temple, there's three enormous stones. They're like almost 1,000 tons a piece. They're
Well,
absolutely ridiculous. Um, they're said to be part of the Roman building. Others think they could be more ancient due to the size and stuff, and the Romans just built on top. But whatever. The interesting thing about Baalbek is that despite the sort of Romanization of the temple, it's a great temple to Jupiter, it's a temple to Dionysus, and a temple to Venus as well, I believe. There,
well,
really amazing complex. Um, but the veneration of Baal continued really strongly throughout the Roman period, and apparently for a very long time after uh, at Baalbek. It was a very powerful idea that stayed there for a long time. So obviously, something very deep and strong there, in that relationship.
thanks for that.
Uh, Powerful ideas, I think.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of, should we say, liberating behavior going on with the the worship of Baal. Uh,
Yeah, absolutely.
this piece is fantastic.
I
Was
see.
that so? That's in the Mithraeum still that piece.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's that's in the room. You go downstairs, and it's got
Yeah,
um some plinths with some stuff on it. It's really cool. Well, there's big one on Hadrian's Wall. We're really famous one. I'll throw a photo
yeah,
of
yeah.
that up. There was it was kind of it was a cult, it seems, for the legions. It's very kind of macho cult. Women could join.
Yeah.
Women are there is evidence that women joined the cult. Um, but it seemed to be a kind of boys' club basically, and a slave could join or a general could join.
Ah,
Uh, but yeah, I mean, the slaves didn't get very far. They couldn't have slaves in the same rank as a general or someone
no,
like that.
no.
But yeah, this was something for everyone, it seems. And it had there's a lot of initiations, and there were a few ranks as well. And I'll see if I can find the
A
graph.
lot of similarities to Christianity then it is. Yeah.
Yeah,
So I was thinking as well, like I've often heard that Mithraism was sort of one of the big contenders of being the official religion of the Roman Empire.
yeah,
It almost seems like they were like flipping through a book and like, well, let's have a bit of this and a bit of that, and we'll take this from Egypt and we'll have this from Turkey, we'll have this from yeah,
that's it. Yeah, I had that as well. There's a kind of a, a, a real battle between them to see, which one's gonna come out on top and be the official one, which is interesting why it ended in 383 for me,
yeah,
which is
absolutely.
yeah, and to think there was a Mithraic Pope as well, that's quite interesting. But an element which drew my eye immediately was this kind of Phrygian cap here. Don't know if you saw
Yeah,
that. But that's cool. I think we mentioned it before, but I don't think I mean I think that is represented throughout the empire. I don't think that's just a British thing.
no,
But yeah, we've got another representation of the Romans are celebrating this culture with a Margot from someone who's wearing a cap which is associated with that place we all associate with the migrations and where
absolutely.
the
Yeah,
Romans came from and the Britons subsequently came from, So
yeah.
thought I'd add that in.
And is a sign of liberty and freedom as well as the way it's used. It's very
Is
interesting.
it?
Yeah.
It's funny, it looks like a Liberty cap, isn't it?
Yeah, well, so slaves would freed slaves in the empire would don a Phrygian cap. Uh, so yeah, it's all
Oh,
interlinked.
cool. Cool, cool.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
Excellent. Nice one. Right. And I just wanted to add this in. This is a depiction of it's an early Mithraic depiction of a kind of Last Supper almost. Not won't say that. I'll cut that bit out. But a kind of a depiction of breaking bread with disciples, maybe something like
Mm, yeah. So I just saw the bird guy breaking seed with the bird guy,
that. Oh yeah,
and there's a guy. They look like mummers, like um there's a guy with like a horse head on the end,
yeah,
entertainment or something. But
yeah. Brilliant,
that is fantastic.
brilliant, brilliant. And got some photos of the display inside. And there's a real big light show that goes with it. It's very well thought out in there. You get about 5 minutes in there before you have to get out.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but here's the video I got.
So you were in a cellar at this point, is that right?
Yeah, exactly.
Would this have been an underground feature for them at the time, or was
Certainly,
this? ground level? Do you know?
It's a really good question.
Yeah,
Because
certain cults certainly worshipped underground as pretty normal for some cults, so
yeah,
I wouldn't be surprised. But
yeah, I mean,
especially for a holiest of holy sort of room as well.
yeah, absolutely. The cult of Mithras is based around obviously Mithras, who had an immaculate conception and was born out of the rock. So
Okay.
you can imagine rituals going on and then being having to walk outside after that. That makes sense to me.
Hmm.
Makes sense that it will be out inside.
But
Well,
as a sun
cool.
god as well, you
Yeah.
would expect some light coming in somewhere. But yeah, that'd be interesting to see what how Roman ground level relates to modern London ground level. And where this site, how this site would have been placed. It's amazing the walls there and everything. That
Yeah,
it's been nicely maintained.
it has. Yeah.
Was there any finds on display at all? Or
Yeah, I will. I'll throw the picture up of the picture I got of it. But
great, thank you.
there's an entire because I took a video on the GoPro, but it was rubbish, so I didn't put it
Oh no,
in.
oh dear.
Yeah, no, but there's an entire cabinet of all sorts of things which have been found. So
Great,
it's brilliant. There's all sorts there. It's really cool. Cool, brilliant. That's just another photo.
great.
Cool. Right, and
Oh, there we go. Yeah,
I went to the British Museum, as I mentioned earlier. This is one of the artifacts which, when we're considering a pre-Roman inhabitants, it provides pretty good evidence for, I think.
yeah.
Um, there's been a number of Iron Age finds made. This is one of them, the Battersea Shield, which is said to be a British shield, found just by the Battersea Bridge, which
It's phenomenal, isn't it?
yeah,
Don't see how it just looks any different to what you would expect in the
yeah,
Mediterranean at the time.
yeah, yeah, quite right.
It's stunning.
It's that what you're saying there. I mean, that there's scholars who make those distinctions to state that Celtic art, um, and Etruscan and Scythian art all had this very common kind of aesthetic to it. Um, and they are all within kind of a bit like the later kind of not work with the Celts and the Saxons. You think, is it Celt or is it British
Yeah.
or is it Saxon? There's a lot of crossover
If
between.
only there was some link between these areas, Adam.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly that.
Oh God.
And
Uh,
this is another artifact which is kind of presented in tandem with that shield, which is the horn helmet, found
no,
at Waterloo. And you think we know that the Britons used to put their artifacts in water. I don't see that helmet traveling a million miles to you. It's not battered, is it?
no.
Um, so I think these artifacts as well, they provide a further evidence for habitation, pre-Roman habitation in London.
And of important people as well.
Exactly that.
This isn't just, you know, Dave's shield, is it?
No, exactly that.
This is it's not just Dave's shield. It's someone important's shield. It's King Dave's shield.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah.
Yeah,
So yeah,
that's fantastic. That helmet, that is wonderful. I'd
it
love to
is.
see that decoration a bit up close at some point.
Yeah, I think you got a real kind of sort of these are examples of real ceremonial, ritualistic kind of culture going on, haven't you? Here's another really interesting piece, nothing to do with London, but it's in the museum.
Oh, nice. Yeah,
This is the Kirkburn sword, it's a British sword. Um, Beautiful kind of artwork on it. I don't know if you can
that
see it
is
that well, probably, but
amazing.
This
Oh yeah,
quite
wonderful.
impressive. This has been brought back into display at the museum, and this is the mold cape.
It's stunning.
Yeah,
Just well,
yeah,
and this is even think this is even pre-Albine. This is like tail end of the Beaker people. If the dating's right, that is. I don't know.
yeah,
I don't even know how you come up with that date. It must be from pottery found near it or something like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
This piece is absolutely stunning. It's just amazing.
Mm. It is, isn't it? To think that was found here, that artwork and that kind of detail and the way it looks, it's like, where would you say that was from if you knew that wasn't found in Wales, Peter?
Um, Say Africa or the Middle East.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's what I had in mind as well.
Yeah,
It's like,
North Africa, Middle East.
mm, yeah,
But do you think, this is the Phoenicians when came out of the Strait of Gibraltar and they went, and depending on who you're talking to, some went south, some went a bit north, some went very north. They were people hardly mention it. It's so odd how it's not as much in the public discourse as it used to be in say in the 19th century. But Phoenicians in Britain seems like such a taboo thing. Unless
yeah,
if you're in Cornwall, you can talk about tin trade with the Phoenicians. You get cross over the border to Devon, you can't even bloody mention it, and no one ever. They talk about the maybe up to the coast of Iberia or maybe Western France. Phoenician settlements. They hardly ever talk about Britain as being covered in Phoenician settlements, as it probably was. But they also went south down to West Africa, you
yeah.
know, and possibly even over the Atlantic to America as well.
Wow.
Possibly, I really wouldn't be surprised because they were bloody good sailors, and
Yeah.
the trade winds and the trade currents, as Ross brilliantly showed once, and in the Wilson and Blackett book on the Odyssey, where they did a little PDF, the trade currents for the Atlantic and trade winds favor a transatlantic crossing west,
Mm.
and then you can just swing up the coast and come back across, to Britain. So
Incredible.
yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Phoenicians were bringing ideas, technology, art styles, and not just bringing them, but taking them back with them. That's the
Yeah.
other that's the other idea. And who knows what philosophy or other ideas came backwards and forwards. Uh,
Brilliant.
and that is a relationship that's stayed with the west of Britain right through, to the Middle East, right through to the early medieval period.
Yeah.
That
Absolutely.
metal trade really drove incredible links between those parts of the world for
Yes.
for thousands of years. Like it didn't stop. It never stopped. Right.
No, it never stopped. And there's 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 plenty of corroborating evidence for that.
Oh yeah, loads of it. Loads of it.
Yeah, it's just incredible. And it's funny how that idea of Phoenicians in Britain has been reduced to just
Yeah,
a
it's just sort of like not really talked about. It's not, you don't get thrown out if you talk about it, but it's just not in the public discourse at all.
yeah, that's it.
When
Yeah,
you talk about those periods, it just doesn't come up anymore. Whereas if you read, antiquarian 19th century books, they talk about it quite openly and
yeah,
willingly, and the books are full of evidence,
yeah.
both historical and archaeological as well.
Yes, yeah. There's that stele in Israel, isn't there? Which is from tin from Cornwall or
Oh
Devon.
yeah, yeah. The ingots were found. Yeah,
Ingot.
absolutely, from the
Yeah,
West Country. Yeah, absolutely. And they found more ingots off the coast of Devon, which were obviously going somewhere.
yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah, great. Oh wow.
yeah. These are great. Um, Another example of very skilled craftsmanship of a culture that use solid gold as well
Yeah,
uh, to for their talks.
yeah.
Which, just beautiful, you know.
This is another show of how British culture stayed between the Iron Age and the late medieval period as well, because there's
Mm.
evidence that talks were worn as a sign of kingship in the Iron Age through the Roman period, and still used them in the early medieval period.
That's fascinating.
Yeah,
I didn't know that bit. That's great. Fantastic.
they are stunning. Look at them.
Yeah, yeah, they
Just
are.
the array of designs. Some of the fineness of the weave of the metal, and some of them is
Yeah, absolutely.
that one at the back right is massive.
Wow, yeah. Proper
That
chunk.
is a lot of gold.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Absolutely. Just beautiful. I mean, this is the image. These talks are incorporated into that 19th century savage image that you get, isn't it? With
Oh, absolutely, yeah,
the the woad picks and everything like that. And this is like
yeah.
it's almost as if to say like this is the evidence we've got of the ancient Britons. Therefore, that's all they wore.
That's all. Yeah,
That's
and it's like they had this incredible skill of metalworking, but they couldn't do anything. They couldn't make clothes.
clothes, yeah, or armor.
Could
Yeah, they
weave
just ran this battle
weave
naked.
metal, but not
Yeah,
material.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
yeah. Uh, but then, yeah, as I say, these things were definitely worn during and after the Roman period. So you would also have to imagine uh, a Roman Briton in all his finery and his leather and his weaved clothes and his boots, and also wearing the talk of a savage Briton.
yeah.
So this is. But you can just look at them and say that is not that is the
No,
work of a advanced culture. I mean, it's absolutely fantastic.
absolutely, yeah. So it's great. It's great we've got them to look at. Um, cool. And this, yeah, said to be an Anglo-Saxon sword. Okay,
That's
but
our bingo card, Adam.
yeah, exactly. We knew we'd get there in the end, didn't we? Um, yeah. We've spoken enough about the alphabet on this channel.
Yeah,
Um, this is a clear example of those Mediterranean alphabets, or those alphabets which are linked with the Mediterranean and also Northern Europe as well, which seem to have a link. Um, Said to be Saxon probably because of the runes,
yeah,
basically, in that the Britons didn't have the same kind of letters, which we've shown they did.
yeah.
Um,
And I've no doubt there is some sort of ancestral link between Colburn and Firthark.
yeah,
I think.
I thought, yeah, they're too similar not to be, aren't they? It's like the DNA is the same.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
But it's a really cool artifact. Really cool. Um, yeah, I think the the depiction of the British alphabet given by Nennius um would very much be happy with these letters, which I'll
Mm.
give an image for as well. But he Nennius recorded the British script in the uh 9th century. Um, yeah, I'll let you marry that up and see what you think. But yeah, we've got this stone as this stone cross, which
Mm.
is also said to be Saxon. They say it's for a Cuthbert, pray for Cuthbert, but the actual name on there is Kinnibalth.
CYN does not sound Saxon to me. It sounds very, very British.
Yeah, and it's found in Lancaster as well, which is some
I just find it. I find it strange, to be honest. I find it strange in both Britain and with the Saxons about when they chose to use what sort of alphabets. And especially, we can't just say that Latin goes hand in hand with Christianity because there's obviously Christian monuments with different alphabets on, non-Latin alphabets on. Um,
Great point. Great point.
it's yeah, it is an odd period and an odd amazing mix of things going on, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely that. Yeah.
So where was this cross? Oh, Lancaster, sorry, Lancaster.
Lancaster, yeah. So it's on that western part of the island.
Yeah,
Okay. 8th
yeah, a ninth century, eighth century.
century. Yeah.
Yeah,
They say they can translate it to pray for Cuthbert, but
mm. Pray
yeah.
for Cannibal. Yeah,
Cannibal. It sounds British, doesn't it?
it really does. Yeah,
Doesn't sound like Cuthbert either.
no,
That would be another example of that alphabet that the Britons were using as
yeah,
well in the western part of the island.
yeah.
Cool. Um, so moving away from the museum, there's not an awful lot of British stuff in there. So as I mentioned, I didn't want to go into too much about loads of stuff. I didn't spend too much time. I just wanted to see the British stuff. I've
Yeah.
been there plenty of times. Highly recommend going there, um, just for an absolute day trip of world culture. It's an absolutely brilliant place to go. Um, but these aren't places I visited on my trip. I just wanted to add them in.
All
Um,
right. Cool. Yeah.
just wanted to add them in for a bit of a effect because we were talking earlier about this Bardic way to view London, um, which is this system of remembering certain places and there's stories which are linked in with them, which help us understand this, the certain areas. Um, and in the Bardic tradition, the Tower of London is remembered as Bryn Gwyn, which is the White Hill, basically. Um, and a cool fact about this place is that this is meant to have been. This is said as where King Bran's head is buried.
Yeah.
You know, as you said before, Bran is remembered as a real historical personage, who's also got their kind of mythological counterpart with them. And there's
Yeah.
Bran is kind of Bran turns into the deity of crows, basically,
Yeah.
and crows are remembered in the kind of the Welsh ethos as being associated with bloodline and essentially royal bloodline. And if you look on the early Tudor crests, they use three crows as their
Interesting.
yeah, and crows. I think the reason for this is that crows their genetic memory and their memories of lineage are like a big. It's very apparent that they remember their lineage and their ancestry.
Oh, right. Okay.
And
And this is to do with then how they behave socially with each other and yeah.
absolutely, and there's certain grudges as well. There's evidence that they have bloodline
Mm,
grudges. Okay, so that's a
really.
very interesting element to weave into this.
They
Um,
corvids are very intelligent animals as well and
right.
are very you can train them.
Oh,
Um,
right.
yeah.
Incredible.
Uh, which is essentially, you've mentioned the relationship between ravens and the Tower of London as well, which
Yes.
is sort of the relationship the beefeaters have with the ravens is because of how ravens are susceptible to training. But
Yeah.
all it's worth noting that when you go back to a certain point in history, people don't necessarily differentiate between corvids in the way we do.
Yeah.
So Bran might translate modern day into crow, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't mean choughs, crows, ravens, jackdaws,
Yeah.
or any other member of the corvid family,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. Yeah.
because they didn't necessarily distinguish them in older texts. So
No. Yeah, excellent. But I thought that's that bit of folk memory there is interesting. That's apparently why we keep them there in the tower. So
Yeah,
excellent. And also it's said that Arthur apparently removed Bran's head from here when he became king, uh,
yeah,
because it said that Bran's head had to be there to protect from invaders. When Arthur took it upon himself to be, no, I am now the symbol of that
yeah.
dictatorship. So
Needs no other defense but him.
yeah, there
Yeah.
we go. Well, yeah, uh, you can say that that didn't bode well, did it? In the
No,
end,
no. But it's interesting you mention that because there's well, going back to London and as a place of royal what's the word we're looking for? Authority.
yeah,
In the triads, London crops up a lot.
yeah,
It does, as a very important place, as a seat of power, and as a place where, like, there's a suggestion. I'm sure, and I can't remember what it was I was reading, but a suggestion that that you have to go to London. You know,
yeah,
even the Welsh kings would go to London to assert themselves, and it makes sense as that has always been a centre for that part of Britain,
yeah,
just as much as um, somewhere like Carlisle might have been for Western Britain, or Wroxeter, or York for Northern Britain, or Edinburgh. So London would have been for that
yeah.
part of Britain for God knows how long.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you said you said that they're mentioned in the triads quite a lot.
Yeah,
When you send the triads as kind of the writing down of these very old stories, and it's the
yeah.
same thing with the Mabinogi. When I read the Mabinogi for the first time, um, London again there pops up all the time as this place which Peter's talking about, which is this place where you need to go and basically show your face.
Hmm.
Um, and in a way it kind of has remained that place throughout time, hasn't it? It's like you get people who, in the Industrial Revolution, London was this place paved with gold, in which leave your farmstead or wherever it is and go and make your fortune in this wonderful place.
Hmm.
So it's one of those things which is
And the Italian bankers certainly thought it was an important place to go to.
the Italian bankers did, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, that's
I don't think it was just being out of the reach of necessarily the church or anything like that. I think that's why Britain has appealed to certain people and possibly even the Holy Family, over centuries, being out of reach of Rome, whether that's in the guise of the empire or as the church. But there's something else, like why London as well? Why not?
yeah,
Why not? Bristol. Bristol was a huge place during the Industrial Revolution,
yeah,
but because of the seven. But really, we can talk about that as being part of the seven. But why London in particular? I mean,
mm,
why that place? Why that square mile where London, Londinium is as well? Like,
yeah.
very interesting choice.
I think you're bang hitting the nail on the head there. There is a mystery to that, isn't there?
Yeah.
I think, if you believe in these sorts of metaphysical things, if you will, hopefully this video has been a good pulling apart of some of those mysterious kind of placements on this place by the ancient culture that has been in this island for a long time.
Hmm.
Um, cool. Thanks, Peter.
Oh, thank
Um,
you. This is great.
yeah. Um, cool. And another thing to mention is the Llandin, which is Parliament Hill, which is again in the Bardic tradition said to be a place where the Gorsedd was held. Um, and that's why it's called the Llandin, and that's why it's called Parliament Hill. Basically, that's where it gets
Nice.
its name. It's a place. It was a meeting place for wise men, the Druids,
Yeah.
uh, in ancient times. Apparently, that memory, that tradition is recorded. Um, and a bit similar to Primrose Hill. Primrose Hill,
Mm.
mentioned by William Blake. William Blake said that he saw the true spiritual sun at Primrose Hill,
Yeah.
which was
Is that
another.
where Yolo is remembered?
Yep,
Yeah.
yep, that's it, that's it.
I'd love to see the Yolo monument at Primrose Hill.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
absolutely.
quite a fantastic thing that's there, like this huge seal in the ground, like with
Mm.
Cold Britain written on it, and
I
yeah,
didn't know that.
yeah.
I knew there was something because there's something about Blake. Blake's got a part of it as well.
Oh, really?
He said that um, little extract I just said, it's carved in there as well.
Oh, interesting.
And
Nice.
so
There's
yeah,
certain things people have spent a lot of money on that, and a lot of time and a lot of thought on that Yolo monument.
that's really
It's a
cool.
it's a beautiful thing by the looks of it. I've just seen images of it, but yeah, I'd love to see it.
Fantastic. Yeah, I'd love to go and see that. Brilliant. Cool. Um, there we go. That's everything for London.
Llandin,
London.
Llandin. I like that. Llandin.
Llandin. Yeah. Lland exactly.
Yeah,
I
the
think that
enclosure of the town of the city.
yeah. There's a place called Llandin in Wales as well. And it said there to translate as yeah, a court, basically. So
Port. Ah, interesting.
yeah. So yeah, all of these stories are woven into the fabric of the landscape, aren't they? So and they're all there to pull apart. Yeah, so I hope you enjoyed that, folks,
Well, I
and
certainly did.
I'm glad you did as well.
Bugger the rest of you.
Brilliant.
And Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas.
Oh,
Absolutely.
this cross. I'd love to have a. I'd love to see this, Adam.
Yeah, yeah.
This
It's
reminds me. Can I just go on in a quick one before we finish?
yeah, yeah, of course.
I spoke to you about this. I think we didn't do this on air, but a few weeks ago, or maybe a couple of months ago now, David Mosley shared on the BHH page some images of the Staffordshire Hoard,
Yes, yeah,
again from this northwestern part of the country,
yeah,
and it's said to be um, mid seventh century, so about 650. I think they reckon it was buried. Um, by this time, this would have been Mercia.
yeah,
Um, they say it's all Saxon. They say there's a few pieces of earlier insular design. The word Brythonic or British is not mentioned anywhere in any descriptions I can find of the Staffordshire Hoard.
really.
It's full of knot work. It's full of
Wow,
Christian symbolism,
wow.
which is very interesting because for mid seventh century Mercia is famously still a pagan country. It's still a pagan state. You know, there's one of the best organized, but one of the last to convert. Mercia was one of the last to convert to Christianity. So it's full of Christian symbolism in a time where they weren't Christian. Um, but they say that these things were then plundered off the neighboring Angles. Now, these Angles would have only been Christian for 50 years,
Yep, yep, yep.
if
So
that, and they
yeah,
seem to have a fully developed Christian design work in their artwork, which is possible. But yeah, there's not even one mention that it could have come from the other direction, and
yeah,
come from Wales, from already very Christian Wales, or even
yes,
have originated from amongst the Christian and Brythonic people of of
yeah,
pre-Saxon
yeah,
Mercia, who would
yeah,
have still been living in the area at the time. And I've been knocking my head over the images so much about how they decide what style of artwork is Saxon and what style of artwork is Brythonic or
yes,
British. And and they use this word like insular, and insular includes Saxon style as well. Like technically, if you look at it, insular is meant to be a part of the development of Irish, British, and Saxon artwork, and particularly through manuscript style.
yeah,
They
yeah,
see the artwork developing in the manuscripts, then it moves on to metalwork and stonework and things like that. But how they put down with a finger that that's Saxon, or that's not Saxon, I just can't tell myself. Like what motifs are you looking for? What design styles are they looking for? And how long has it been skewed one way by the academia as well? Um,
Yes.
how many things are listed under in the museum as Saxon and are not Saxon? How much of a Staffordshire hoard is Saxon? Mercy, I just don't know.
Yeah.
There's one particular piece has a Bible verse written in Latin on it.
Oh, right. That's yeah, that's like devout Christians,
Yeah,
and
and
also the
that's been analysed by Okasha, and Okasha has done a loads of Brythonic. This is someone who should really know the difference. And
yeah,
I've read the thing, and it's saying, oh well, this is very typical of Saxon lettering, and I'm looking at it thinking, yeah, but that's typical of Brythonic inscriptions that we've spent ages looking on it as well. The letter styles, uh, using of dots to separate words as well, things like that. Um,
wow, yeah, very good. Yeah,
mixture of capitals and cursive styles as well. All of it. I'm just like, that just looks so much like inscriptions that you and I have looked at, which are unambiguously Brythonic.
yeah.
How is this piece from pre-Christian Saxon Mercia? Like what? Yeah.
The Saxons at that point didn't have a great grasp on Latin either, by the sounds of it either.
No, no.
The obviously the Christianity being a new venture for a lot of Saxons in that period as well. So
Especially for the for a metal worker as well. We're not just
yeah,
talking about a monk learning Latin and writing it. This for it to then get to the level of metal worker as well is that shows a development of artistic style which takes
yeah,
time.
time, funding,
Yeah,
industry for it to be there and support for it to be there, all of those things which you're not going to get in 50 years. You might get in, you might,
yeah,
but
it's all very tight, isn't it? And there's
yeah, but
more reasonable explanations. It seems like
the Britons would have been doing that for a long time before that.
yeah,
The Britons were known as were known as having very good Latin, probably the best in Europe.
mm.
Interesting.
which is why the insular style was so successful. You
Yes.
know, and
Yeah.
and basically took over learning in Western Europe at that period.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
the existing copy of Tacitus, as they believed, was copied from something written in Insular.
Wow.
Yeah, Insular script.
Wow. Right.
But
Okay.
yeah, so that's something to finish on.
On that bombshell, I hope you've enjoyed this show, and I hope you've had a Merry Christmas.
Absolutely. We'll
Yeah.
hopefully be back in the new year with a bang,
Absolutely.
with possibly Thornborough Henges Part 3.
Yep.
Hopefully, Thornborough Henges Part 3 will have maybe even Southeast Wales Zodiac revelations for you as well. Um, and hopefully, I'd like to get some people on from um, Britain's hidden history to have a little chat with me and Adam. A few interviews would be really nice to uh, get the group together again, and hopefully to meet up with some other content producers, um, and see if we can do some stuff together and just sort of widen out the conversation further. I think
Yeah.
is our aim for the next year, isn't it, Adam?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. We aim to do that. Cast the net out essentially. Bring this to as many people as possible and open the conversation up to people who are interested in adjacent topics, and as well as bringing the conversation as much as we can back to these guys,
Yeah,
Wilson and Blackett, who, you know, today is very it,
poignant.
poignant. It reminds us that we need to honor their lives and honor their work.
Absolutely.
The lives of those guys and of Ross, um, and hopefully just bring home this message as best we can for their contributions in memory of those guys, and also for ancestors and everybody who's involved, who's got a kind of link to these histories, which are going to be familial for a lot of people.
Hmm.
So
Absolutely, and our the place that's around us. You know,
yeah.
um, Martin kindly offered. He said, "Is there something I can help you and Adam with the videos?" And my initial thought was the most important thing you can do is what you're doing already,
Hmm.
going out to where you are, where you live, and having a look around and seeing what's around you, because the history is right there. It's not just in Wales or just in Cornwall, or it's all throughout, as Adam has brilliantly shown in this. It's even in the heartland, even in London.
Yeah.
It's still there. So and that's the important thing you can do is go out and have a look for it, because it is there. Um, and in the spirit of Ross as well, hopefully do it in the best of spirits, and with an open mind and an open heart as well, which
Yeah.
is very Christmassy of me.
Excellent.
I bet I've got to go and watch It's a Wonderful Life and drink some mulled wine now. I feel so bloody Christmassy.
Excellent. That's a good idea. Mulled wine.
Great.
Brilliant.
But alcohol.
Yeah.
Right. Merry Christmas, everyone.
Merry Christmas all.